She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet, extracting her driver's license with deliberate precision. "I insist that you check my identification properly," she said, holding the license out toward Thompson. "I believe you'll find that I meet all the requirements for entry." Thompson's eyes narrowed as he snatched the license from her hand, clearly annoyed by what he perceived as continued defiance. He held it up to the light, examining it with exaggerated thoroughness, his lips moving as he read her information silently. "Maria Rodriguez, age 45, Phoenix address," he read aloud mockingly. "Congratulations, you're old enough to drink. That doesn't change the fact that this is a private event." He moved toward the handheld scanner that the club used to verify identification, more out of habit than any real intention to let them in. The scanner was a high-tech device that connected directly to various law enforcement databases, ostensibly to check for fake IDs and outstanding warrants. Most patrons never knew about its additional capabilities. As Thompson scanned the license, he continued his verbal abuse. "You know what your problem is. You think you're entitled to special treatment just because you showed up with your little princess here." Emma's face flushed with embarrassment and anger, but Maria remained perfectly calm. She had learned long ago that the best way to deal with bullies was to let them expose themselves completely before revealing your hand. Thompson was so focused on his performance for the crowd that he didn't immediately notice when the scanner's screen changed. The device emitted a soft beep, and suddenly Thompson's expression shifted. The screen, which normally displayed basic identification information, now showed something that made his face drain of color. A gold badge emblem had appeared on the display, along with rank information that made his hands tremble slightly. The scanner had connected to the police department's personnel database, revealing that Maria Rodriguez wasn't just any middle-aged woman out for a night on the town. She was Detective Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, a decorated officer with commendations for bravery and leadership that filled multiple screens. Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as he stared at the information scrolling across the device. The crowd behind Maria had grown quiet, sensing that something significant was happening. Emma looked up at her mother with newfound understanding, finally realizing why Maria had been so calm in the face of such blatant disrespect. Thompson's earlier confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by the dawning realization that he had just thoroughly humiliated himself in front of dozens of witnesses, while treating a high-ranking police officer like garbage. The scanner continued to display Maria's credentials, including her badge number, current assignment to the Major Crimes Unit, and a list of accommodations that would make any reasonable person show immediate respect. Thompson's face had gone from pale to ashen as he read through the information, his earlier arrogance replaced by obvious panic. He looked up at Maria with new eyes, seeing not the woman he had just dismissed and insulted, but a law enforcement officer who had the power to make his life very difficult indeed. Maria simply stood there, watching him process the magnitude of his mistake, her expression never changing from the calm, professional demeanor she had maintained throughout the entire encounter. Emma squeezed her mother's hand, a mixture of pride and amazement washing over her face. She had always known her mother was tough, but seeing her handle this situation with such grace and strategic thinking filled her with admiration. The people in line behind them had begun to realize that something extraordinary was happening, and phones were now openly recording the scene. Thompson was trapped in a moment of his own making, his usual tactics of intimidation and discrimination having backfired spectacularly. The club manager, Robert Wesley, emerged from the building at that moment, drawn by the commotion at the entrance. Wesley was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who had built his reputation on running a tight ship and avoiding any kind of negative publicity. He took one look at the scene, his bouncer holding a scanner with obvious distress written across his face, a calm middle-aged woman standing confidently beside a young girl, and a crowd of people recording everything on their phones, and immediately knew that something had gone terribly wrong. Wesley approached the group with the quick, efficient stride of someone who had experience dealing with crisis situations. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice carrying the tone of someone who was trying to diffuse a situation before it spiraled out of control. Thompson turned to his boss with obvious relief, holding out the scanner like it was a poisonous snake he needed to get rid of as quickly as possible. "Mr. Wesley, I think you need to see this," Thompson said, his voice cracking slightly. Wesley took the device and looked at the screen, his expression quickly mirroring Thompson's earlier shock. The gold badge emblem seemed to pulse on the display, a symbol of authority that commanded immediate respect and attention. Wesley's eyes darted back and forth between the screen and Maria's face, processing the implications of what he was seeing. Maria finally spoke, her voice carrying the calm authority that had served her well throughout her career. "Good evening, Mr. Wesley. I'm Detective Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, and this is my daughter Emma. We're here to celebrate her 21st birthday, but it seems your employee has some concerns about our presence." The understatement was delivered with such perfect timing that even Emma had to suppress a smile. Wesley's face went through a series of expressions as he realized that his bouncer had just created a public relations nightmare of epic proportions. Thompson, sensing that his job was now in serious jeopardy, began to stammer out an explanation. "I was just doing my job, Mr. Wesley. I thought there might be a problem with the identification, so I was being thorough." But his excuse rang hollow in the face of the evidence, and everyone present could see through his obvious lie. Maria had remained completely professional throughout the entire encounter, while Thompson had shown clear bias and discrimination. Wesley turned to Maria with the desperate expression of someone who knew he was facing a potential lawsuit and negative media attention. Detective Rodriguez, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. Please, allow me to personally escort you and your daughter inside as my guests this evening. He shot a withering look at Thompson, who seemed to shrink under his boss's glare. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, but many continued to record the aftermath of the confrontation. Maria looked at Emma, who nodded eagerly, her excitement about the evening renewed by the turn of events. "We'd be happy to accept your invitation, Mr. Wesley," Maria said graciously. "But I think it's important that we address the underlying issue here. Your employee didn't treat us poorly because he thought there was a problem with our identification. He treated us poorly because he made assumptions about who we are based on our appearance." Wesley nodded vigorously, clearly understanding the gravity of the situation. "You're absolutely right, detective. This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable, and I assure you that it will be addressed immediately." He turned to Thompson, who was still standing there with the scanner in his hands, looking like a man who had just watched his career implode in real time. "Derek, we need to talk. Right now." As they walked into the club, Maria felt Emma's hand slip into hers. "Mom, that was incredible," Emma whispered. "I can't believe he actually scanned your ID without knowing who you were." Maria smiled, remembering her own daughter's earlier embarrassment and how quickly it had transformed into pride. "Sometimes the best lesson someone can learn is the one they teach themselves," she replied quietly. The interior of Crimson Nights was everything Emma had imagined: pools and lights, modern decor, and the kind of atmosphere that made everything feel exciting and adult. But for Maria, the real satisfaction came from knowing that she had handled the situation with professionalism and dignity. She had neither lost her temper nor abused her authority, but she had also refused to accept discrimination quietly. Wesley led them to a VIP section that overlooked the main dance floor, gesturing for them to sit at a table that probably cost more per night than most people spent on their monthly rent. "Please, order whatever you'd like this evening. Everything is on the house, and I want to personally ensure that you have an outstanding experience." He paused, clearly struggling with how to address the elephant in the room. "I also want you to know that Thompson's behavior tonight does not reflect the values of this establishment." Maria nodded, appreciating Wesley's direct approach to the problem. "I understand that you can't control every employee's actions, Mr. Wesley, but I hope you understand that what happened tonight wasn't just about poor customer service. It was about discrimination, and that's something that affects everyone who walks through your doors." Wesley's face showed that he fully grasped the implications of her words, and Maria could see him mentally calculating the potential damage to his business. Emma, meanwhile, was taking in everything with wide eyes. She had never seen her mother in full professional mode before, and the experience was both enlightening and inspiring. "Mom, do you think he'll actually change anything?" she asked quietly. Maria considered the question carefully, drawing on her years of experience dealing with people who had been caught in wrongdoing. People like Wesley usually change their policies when they realize that discrimination is bad for business, Maria replied. Whether that translates to real change depends on how seriously he takes tonight's lesson. She watched as Wesley continued to hover nearby, clearly anxious to make amends for his employee's behavior. The man was obviously intelligent enough to understand that a discrimination lawsuit from a police officer would be devastating to his business. Thompson, meanwhile, had been led away by Wesley's assistant manager, and Maria noticed that he didn't return to his post at the door. She suspected that his employment at Crimson Knights had ended the moment that Scanner revealed her identity. While she took no pleasure in anyone losing their job, she also knew that Thompson's behavior wasn't likely to change without serious consequences. As the evening progressed, Maria found herself reflecting on the broader implications of what had happened. How many other people had been turned away from this establishment based on Thompson's prejudices? How many had simply accepted the discrimination and walked away without challenging it? The thought troubled her, but it also reinforced her belief that standing up to injustice was always the right choice. Emma was having the time of her life, dancing with friends who had arrived later and enjoying the VIP treatment that Wesley had arranged for them. Every so often, she would return to the table where Maria sat, her face glowing with happiness and pride. "This is the best birthday ever, Mom," she said during one of these visits. "Not just because of the club, but because of what you did tonight." Maria smiled, remembering her own 21st birthday and how different the world had been back then. The most important thing you can learn from tonight is that you never have to accept being treated poorly just because someone thinks they have power over you, she told Emma. But you also have to be smart about how you respond. Losing your temper rarely solves anything. As the night wound down, Wesley approached their table one final time. "Detective Rodriguez, I wanted to let you know that we've implemented some immediate changes to our door policy. All of our security staff will be receiving additional training on customer service and discrimination prevention. I've also spoken with our corporate office about implementing a formal complaint process for situations like this." Maria nodded approvingly. "That's a good start, Mr. Wesley. But the real test will be whether these changes actually protect other customers from experiencing what we went through tonight." She stood up, gathering her purse and jacket. "I hope you understand that I'll be keeping an eye on how this establishment operates going forward." Wesley's face showed that he understood perfectly. "Of course, detective. We welcome any feedback you might have about our operations." He paused, then added, "And I hope you'll consider coming back to see how we've improved." Maria smiled but made no commitments. She had learned long ago that actions spoke louder than words, and only time would tell whether Wesley's promises would translate into real change. As they walked out of the club, Emma linked arms with her mother. "Do you think Thompson learned anything from tonight?" she asked. Maria considered the question carefully, thinking about all the people she had encountered in her career who had been forced to confront their own prejudices. Some people learn from experiences like this, and some people just learn to hide their biases better, she replied honestly. The important thing is that he can't treat other people the way he treated us tonight. The ride home was quiet, both women lost in their own thoughts about the evening's events. Emma was processing what she had learned about her mother's professional life and the respect that came with Maria's position. Maria was thinking about the broader implications of discrimination and how often it went unchallenged in society. She was also proud of how Emma had handled the situation, showing maturity and understanding beyond her years. When they arrived home, Emma hugged her mother tightly. "Thank you for not backing down tonight, Mom. I know it would have been easier to just walk away and find somewhere else to go." Maria hugged her back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction about how the evening had unfolded. "Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do," she replied. "But that's what makes it worth doing." As Maria got ready for bed, she thought about the report she would need to file about the incident. While she hadn't been on duty, the discrimination she had experienced was something that needed to be documented, both for her own protection and to create a record in case other similar complaints were filed against the establishment. She also made a mental note to follow up on Wesley's promises about training and policy changes. The next morning, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from her partner, Detective Jake Morrison. "Saw the video online. Looks like you had an interesting night out." Maria groaned, realizing that someone in the crowd had posted footage of the confrontation on social media. She opened her laptop and found the video, which had already been shared hundreds of times and was accompanied by comments both supporting and criticizing her actions. Most of the comments were positive, with people praising her for handling the situation with professionalism and dignity. But there were also negative comments from people who felt she had abused her authority or made too big a deal out of the situation. Maria read through them with the detached interest of someone who had long ago learned not to take public opinion too seriously. Emma appeared in the kitchen as Maria was reading the comments, her own phone in hand. "Mom, you're famous," she said with a grin. "My friends are all sharing the video and talking about how cool you were last night." Maria smiled, but she was also concerned about the attention. Police officers who became the subject of viral videos often found themselves under scrutiny that extended far beyond the original incident. Just remember that this kind of attention can be a double-edged sword, Maria warned her daughter. People will have opinions about what happened, and not all of them will be favorable. Emma nodded, but Maria could see that she was still caught up in the excitement of the moment. The reality of public scrutiny hadn't yet set in for her. Later that day, Maria received a call from her captain, Helen Martinez, who wanted to discuss the incident. "I've seen the video, Rodriguez," Martinez said without preamble. "Tell me what happened from your perspective." Maria gave her a detailed account of the evening's events, emphasizing that she had remained professional throughout and had not identified herself as a police officer until after Thompson had scanned her ID. Martinez listened carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "It sounds like you handled it well," she said finally. "But you know this is going to generate some attention for the department. The media is already calling about the story." Maria had expected as much, but she was still frustrated by the prospect of dealing with reporters and public relations staff. "I documented everything carefully, Captain," Maria replied. "I'm confident that I acted appropriately throughout the entire situation." Martinez assured her that the department would support her, but also warned her to be prepared for additional scrutiny. "The good news is that the video clearly shows you were professional and calm. The bad news is that viral videos have a way of taking on a life of their own." That afternoon, Maria received an unexpected call from Wesley. "Detective Rodriguez, I wanted to update you on the actions we've taken since last night," he said. "Thompson has been terminated, and we've begun implementing the training program I mentioned. I also wanted to let you know that we've received several calls from other customers who experienced similar treatment from him." Maria wasn't surprised by this news, but she was pleased that Wesley was taking the situation seriously. "I'm glad to hear that you're addressing the problem systematically," she said. "Have you considered reaching out to those other customers to apologize for their experiences?" Wesley indicated that he was planning to do exactly that, which impressed Maria with his thoroughness. As the days passed, the video continued to circulate on social media, generating discussions about discrimination, police authority, and the proper way to handle conflict. Maria found herself fielding calls from reporters, advocacy groups, and even other police officers who wanted to discuss the incident. While she appreciated the support, she was also eager for the attention to die down so she could return to her normal routine. Emma, meanwhile, was reveling in her newfound status as the daughter of a viral video star. Her college friends were impressed by her mother's handling of the situation, and Emma found herself retelling the story multiple times to different groups. Maria was proud of her daughter's pride in her, but she also reminded Emma that the real lesson of the evening wasn't about becoming famous, but about standing up for what was right. A week after the incident, Maria received another call from Wesley. Detective Rodriguez, I wanted to let you know that we've completed the first phase of our staff training program, he said. We've also implemented a new policy requiring all door staff to treat every customer with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived social status. Would you be willing to meet with me to discuss how we can continue to improve? Maria was impressed by Wesley's follow-through and agreed to meet with him. When they sat down in his office, she was struck by how seriously he was taking the entire situation. I realized that what happened with Thompson wasn't just about one bad employee, he said. It was about a culture that allowed discrimination to flourish. We're working to change that culture from the ground up. Wesley showed Maria the new training materials that had been developed for all staff members, including scenarios specifically designed to address discrimination and bias. He also outlined a new complaint process that would allow customers to report problems directly to management. Maria was impressed by the comprehensiveness of the changes and told Wesley that she thought he was taking the right approach. The real test will be whether these changes actually prevent future incidents, Maria said. But I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing so far. Wesley nodded, clearly understanding that Maria would be watching to see whether his promises translated into real change. I hope you'll consider giving us another chance to show you what we've learned, he said. Maria smiled, thinking about Emma's upcoming summer break and the possibility of another mother-daughter night out. We'll see, she said. But I want you to know that I appreciate your willingness to take responsibility and make real changes. That's not something I see very often in my line of work. As Maria drove home from the meeting, she reflected on how the entire situation had unfolded. What had started as a simple night out to celebrate Emma's birthday had turned into a lesson about discrimination, authority, and the importance of standing up for what was right. She was proud of how she had handled the situation, but she was even more proud of the lessons Emma had learned from watching her mother refuse to accept unfair treatment. The viral video had brought attention to issues that Maria dealt with regularly in her work as a police officer: discrimination, abuse of power, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. While she hadn't sought out the spotlight, she was glad that the incident had sparked conversations about these important topics. That evening, Emma called from college to check in on her mother. "Mom, I've been thinking about what happened at the club," she said. "I used to think that discrimination was something that happened to other people, but seeing how Thompson treated us made me realize that it's still a real problem." Maria was pleased to hear that Emma was processing the experience thoughtfully. The most important thing you can take away from that night is that you never have to accept being treated poorly because of who you are, Maria said. But you also have to be smart about how you respond. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to back down while maintaining your dignity. Emma promised to remember that lesson, and Maria knew that the experience would stay with her daughter for years to come. As the weeks passed, the attention from the viral video gradually died down, and Maria was able to return to her normal routine. She continued to follow up on Wesley's promises about changes at the club, and she was pleased to hear from other customers that the atmosphere at Crimson Nights had indeed improved. Thompson, meanwhile, had apparently left town, and Maria hoped that he had learned something from his experience. The incident had reinforced Maria's belief that standing up to discrimination was always the right choice, even when it was difficult or uncomfortable. She had shown Emma that authority came with responsibility, and that sometimes the most important battles were the ones that happened in everyday situations. Most importantly, she had demonstrated that dignity and professionalism could be more powerful than anger or aggression. Looking back on the evening, Maria realized that what had happened at Crimson Nights was about more than just one discriminatory bouncer. It was about the broader issues of bias, privilege, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. The viral video had sparked conversations about these topics, and Maria hoped that some good would come from the attention. She also knew that the real change would happen not in the spotlight of social media, but in the quiet moments when people chose to treat each other with kindness and respect. The experience had also strengthened the bond between Maria and Emma, showing her daughter a side of her mother that she had never seen before. Emma had learned that her mother was not just a police officer, but a person who was willing to stand up for what was right, even in her personal life. That lesson would serve Emma well as she continued to grow and face her own challenges in the world. As Maria settled into her evening routine, she felt a sense of satisfaction about how the entire situation had unfolded. She had handled a difficult situation with professionalism and dignity, had taught her daughter valuable lessons about standing up to discrimination, and had perhaps even made a small difference in the world. It wasn't the kind of night out she had planned, but it had turned out to be exactly the kind of experience that reminded her why she had become a police officer in the first place.